Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Now Amir Khan has responded to Conor Benn calling him out, and he seemed to believe that it wasn't disrespectful and he actually likes it because he thinks that Conor Benn should be calling out the big names, and it shows that he's a young hungry lion to call out those kind of names like himself and such as Kell Brook, Sean Porter. It is a positive thing as long as those behind the scenes are making sure they make the right fights at the right time for Conor Benn, because when there is a fighter like that who wants to go straight to world level and wants to push the boundaries, there does need to be someone behind the scenes trying to rein them in, saying, okay, if you want to get to that point, we need to have the learning fights at the right time to get you prepared. And that is what is happening with Conor Benn. He's having some good learning fights. It's interesting how he has bypassed the European scene and the British scene, going straight for world level essentially. I mean, there's no problem with that because fighters seem to do that these days. But sometimes being around British level, European level does give them great experience, not just fighting older fighters who have good experience themselves, but fighting fighters around their level, younger, hungrier, and maybe undefeated, having one or two defeats, still building up to the prime of their careers. I mean, if you look at fights like Anthony Joshua versus Dillian White, Tyson Fury versus Chisora back in the day, those type of fights, it's great when they go in there with older fighters who have the wealth of experience because then they get to learn new and different things. But it is also great when they go in there with a young hungry lion like themselves. So I think that the British scene and the European scene does that extremely well. I mean, look at David Avanesian versus Josh Kelly. Great learning fight for both, and who knew what was going to happen going in? I would say that Josh Kelly was probably the favourite. Then David Avanesian came out on top because he was hungrier and he wanted it more. He was constantly in the face of Josh Kelly, didn't want to give him a moment to use his silky boxing skills, and it just got too much for Kelly in the end. Nevertheless, in spite of that, Conor Benn is going down a different route, and there is nothing wrong with that as long as he has the right fights at the right times, and he is managed correctly, which at the moment I would say he is. He has this Granados fight, which is a good one for him, and you would expect him to be a favourite, but Granados is not coming to lay down, he's coming to win, and he does respect Conor Benn, which is good also. He's not thinking that Conor Benn is just this young whippersnapper coming up, and he's there for the taking, because then that would be underestimating him. He's not going to do that. He shows him the respect he deserves, otherwise it will weaken him, he knows that. So that will be a good little fight for Conor Benn. I don't really see the problem with Conor Benn having 5 or 6 more before going for a Sean Porter, because I think that Conor Benn hasn't really had that amateur experience, and he is learning on the job, learning very quickly. So he does need to develop, and there is no rush, he is still a young man, so there is plenty of time before he looks at a Sean Porter. Maybe Amir Khan is on the horizon, but Amir Khan believes that if he fights him, it could derail his career, because Amir Khan obviously is going to back himself to beat Conor Benn. So it doesn't seem that this fight is on the horizon because it doesn't really work for both at the moment. Maybe it could do down the line, but how many does Amir Khan have left? How many more times is he going to get back in the boxing ring? Because essentially they are both from different eras. Amir Khan is going back the other way. He's gone past his best, whereas Conor Benn is building towards being his best. So on different paths. There are some great fights being put together in the welterweight division. Sean Porter has now been ordered to fight Terence Crawford, or Terence Crawford is the champion, so he has been ordered to defend against Sean Porter. Interestingly enough, before that fight was ordered, Keith Thurman versus Sean Porter was in the works, and David Avanesian versus Terence Crawford was in the works. So 2 interesting fights that could have happened, but this one comes ahead of it, and I think that is a good fight. Sean Porter versus Keith Thurman, it's interesting, but what has Thurman done recently to prove he deserves that kind of opportunity? Because Sean Porter is someone who has remained around world level, and he has worked hard taking tough challenges to remain there, and he has remained more active than Thurman. So it is only really realistic that he does get an opportunity at a world championship because he does stick around world level, and it is good that Crawford gets this breakout fight in the welterweight division, I guess you could say, because I know he's fought Amir Khan, Kell Brook, and fighters like that, but he is still awaiting that big fight at welterweight. This one could be that, and it's not going to be easy for him. And it does kind of show to you that Conor Benn is not ready for that level just yet, because you would not say he's ready for Terence Crawford. If he's not ready for Terence Crawford, then he's not ready for Sean Porter, because Sean Porter has been ordered to fight the champion, Terence Crawford, next. So he's not there just yet. A few more fights and more experience, then maybe he can head towards that point. It's still going to be difficult because there are some great fighters in that division. I would like to see them explore Conor Benn versus Avanesian, maybe even rekindle Conor Benn versus Josh Kelly when he gets back on his feet. That would be an interesting fight. Good domestic matchups. That does prepare them extremely well for when they get to the world scene, when they have to get stuck in, when they have to show who really wants it. I think that the British scene and the European scene prepares them extremely well for those moments. Anyway guys, what are your thoughts on this? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also leave a like and grab that subscribe button. Thanks guys.